26th of February. Welcome everybody in the audience. I see the audience increased a little bit. That's a good sign. And again, the media is hanging with us back in the back of the room. And if you want to speak during the workshop, please fill out one of those little yellow cards in the back outside the doorway and get it to the city clerk, and we'll allow you to speak. Councilman Cox has practiced in the Pledge of Allegiance, so he's going to lead us again. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're not going to sign in. It's a workshop. We can't take a vote. So we just recognize the fact that all of the city council is here, as well as the mayor, city clerk, city attorney, and our department heads. Anybody have any objection to the agenda, which only has one item on it? Okay, so we can move on then. And go right into anybody in the audience that would like to speak to the city council about what's on the agenda tonight. Anybody in the audience would like to speak about the agenda, which is going to be talking about what we're going to do to prepare for the referendum in August on the city charter? I don't see any takers out there, so we're going to move right along to the workshop. And if you don't mind, I'll just kind of introduce why we're doing this. As you know, there's going to be a referendum in August. And we have an obligation to make sure the public is educated what's going on. And so we're having a workshop so we can figure out what we want to do, when we're going to do it, and who's going to do it. So that's why we're here this evening.
Okay, gentlemen. Chris Gaylor, Growth Management Director. Our council has worked diligently in order to bring the public the ability and the opportunity to update the city's charter. Based on the recommendation of the Crestview Charter Review Committee, the proposed language for the revised charter was approved on December 11th, 2017. With a desired date of August 28th for the referendum, the absolute deadline for the packet to be to the supervisor of election is June 15th. He would prefer it by June 1st. The time frame for the passage of the ordinance that will facilitate the charter revisions would need to be scheduled for public meetings on April 9th and May 14th. Now, we have composed a sample. Gentlemen, this is for you to take and look. There's a little package here. It's some ideas, some rough drafts. We just to give you some writing paper for some information and your feedback back to us. So we composed a sample ballot that kind of showed some titles and summaries that you could put. We could break it down into 3 or more sections. We sat with Mr. Lux this morning for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, my staff and I, and discussed the pros and cons of each. Sometimes when you break it down into multiple sections, it would cause some type of discrepancy in our adopted verbiage that we would have to therefore revise. It may be better to combine it all into one simple statement. There again, you could also lose the whole shebang. So it's those 2 different options are before you. Such as we have broken it down into the three main. They're not exactly worded the way we would particularly like for the final wording. But it would be as related to the general new charter being adopted that would eliminate redundant language, out-of-date passages, and simply replace the natural verbiage of the charter to a more updated, modern outline. Of course, we are relating to the city manager form of government, so your second question could actually be related to, shall the charter be amended to provide a city manager form, whereby the city council shall be by a majority vote, shall appoint a city manager. And we led down to the third one, which would be relating to the city clerk, and whether or not it would be appointed by the city council, or remain as it is existing, which would be elected. So you can, as many different items as you see, we can therefore put an amendment number there. But the more we include, the more chances you're going to have voter fatigue, and they're eventually going to become disinterested in running through the cycle. These we felt were the major items of concern: the updated verbiage, the city manager form of government being offered, and the elected or appointed clerk. The remainder of the items are pretty much entailed in the verbiage of the charter itself and would be covered under item 1. So that, just to say, is, like I say, are an example, is to get your brains rolling, to get us some feedback. Another item that we need to address with y'all will be the communication and education of the public. And it's a concern because Crestview has been blessed with a growing number of new citizens. And a number of those new citizens may not know the existing form of government that the city has. Currently, there are approximately 7,300 households in the city of Crestview that have one or more registered voters. Now, in order to reach your electorate or your constituency, the staff has considered several methods of communication. We have run through public gatherings and meetings, such as town halls held at various places within the city. Mr. Whitten actually offers quarterly town homes in order to help educate the citizens now on certain items, and also to get their feedback and help answer any questions. Another avenue would be to have an open house, such as at either open forum at City Hall or Warriors Hall or some other public venue where the board could interact with the public in order to help provide information. You could have dedicated workshops, such as this. This is your workshop time. You could dedicate that to specifically educating the public on the factual information of the charter and the charter review. Social media outlets. Now, this is kind of where it gets tricky, because there's Facebook, there's Twitter, you can post on your website. However, all information that we have must be truly factual information, because we are bound by I give you the copy of the enclosed 1065, 106. You've got a print of it, yeah. 106, 113, the expenditures of local government. And I don't know if you want that read into the record, but it simply states that that you can't spend any funding from the city on anything other than strictly factual information. So, and that also, so that brings us to physical printed media, such as handouts and flyers, as well as newspaper display ads. We have given you an example of what they would be. You may choose, we've got something that would route into a little flyer. This right here is simply frequently asked questions on the council manager form of government. So this would be a pamphlet that would simply express factual information concerning the manager, city manager type of government. It's not just saying it be worded like this, that's what it's for. This is a basis, we need to work on what we want to say. If that's a type of a flyer that we might want to have out for our people. Another would be more your typical flyer or posting. And this could be a 2-page or a 4-page. It could limit you attract the person with your color, then it's inviting, then that way they want to read what's in the information and what would pertain to them. Now, when you're talking about documentation and the factual information, our simple one, which is a simply one subject type, it is factual. It is explaining and concerning your city manager form of government. Your information like this would show, and it shows various questions, various types of information. There's not much on there that shows the existing. When previewing this, you may actually want to more fully explain the existing form of government that exists in the city. You may possibly want a comparison chart of something that would line up the items so that the people can see the different elements and how they react to each other. But right now, staff is at the point where we need guidance to how you want and what you want us to produce. We also need to ask for approval and review and discussion time with our legal advisors, Mr. Hawley and Mr. Shirley, concerning the documentation, so that they can give us the legal expertise as to, is the verbiage biased? Is it, we read it, it may sound factual, legal mind reads it, and they may decide otherwise. So, now concerning your meetings and your individual processes, each councilman has the ability to have and express in their education of the public their independent thoughts and views. So that is a note to realize that you do not all have to agree on the same opinion, same answer, but that you may hold and express your independent views. This pretty much sums up what the discussion with the supervisor of elections with us today. There was several things that I thought was a key piece of information. In the printouts that went out with your questions and your titles that went out from Fort Walton Beach, they put out where they had their questions, your titles. They also encompassed a small area where it give you a clear-cut, down-to-earth expression of what was being done. And I was going to read one for you that would. They were updating and removing language from their charter and renumbering their sections. They give a how it will appeal on the ballot, and then they give the title that has to be 75 words or less. Remember, we need 15 word titles, 75 character or less verbiage in those summaries. They give exact what was on the ballot. Well, in their little expression that went into their information packets, it would say that this amendment would replace and remove obsolete language, renumber the sections for continuity, and make grammatical errors. Those less than 20 words explained the 75 words here. So this may be an avenue when we decide what our ballot is going to look like, that we actually produce out a document that would have a clear-cut, short, simple, concise meaning. That's pretty much what I have to inspire you to actually begin a discussion.
Yes, Mr. Owen.
I read through this flyer, or whatever you call it. And my immediate reaction was that it applied, provided more of it for the city manager than it did anything else. I think it's going to have to be corrected, some it's going to be in violation of the statute.
But we haven't even looked at that yet.
Yeah.
We'll keep that in mind when we look at it.
Right. But keep in mind, there's one that is simply frequent questions concerning the city management, city manager form of government. That is all that's in this flyer. But it is a factual information piece concerning that. This one, you're offering to mix the two. So ever how we would like to do that. I would like permission to explore a more legal realm and to actually sit down and go over some legal verbiage. But we need to know the verbiage and the intent of where you want it to go. Is the 3 proposed questions that we listed on our ballot what you're thinking about putting on your ballot? To us, it handles all 3 avenues, but you as a board may want 4 avenues, 2, or 7, or whatever.
No.
So,
Let's find out what we want.
okay,
Discussion.
Mr. President,
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Plunkett.
question number 1, why wouldn't we previously have these documents that she referenced to there? I don't find them in my package.
what,
Like you stated about the Fort Walton, that little small package and whatsoever difference. Say you're referencing to certain documents, which we don't even have no documents.
I just got them. This here would be something you may want to look at, or you may
Exactly.
not. If you want to, if you care to look at this, I would be happy to provide it. If you're not interested in this, then I we wouldn't provide it. We're just, this is what we've come across. This is what we'd like to offer. We just need to know what from us you would like to have.
Myself personally, anything that legislate anything involving my citizens, Chris, I want a copy of it.
That was, you're wanting a copy of the Fort Walton Beach amendments.
Whatever documentation you have referenced to and you've alluded to, couple 3 documents there.
Well, this is the one that is, that we have, the staff has prepared that references
Okay,
to
and
the city
another
of
question,
Crestwood.
Mr. President, I want to ask, all right, and you also alluded to several times in there, we. Now, then you talked about our attorneys and Tallahassee attorney. Now, who is the we? Define we again, that you're recommending and giving and passing on to us. But you alluded to, said we 4 different times,
Do you prefer I use the word staff?
whatever.
Okay, when then staff requests and needs guidance from you.
Okay, fine.
You done, Mr. Plunkett?
Yeah, for the time being.
Now is the time, gentlemen, to talk about, what, Mr. Cox, go ahead.
Yes. Most of my question is on the second page showing option B, which is summarizing the proposed changes, but then you say yes or no. That's confusing.
Your option B is a single ballot, a single amendment. And this was, if you, and Mr. Lux and I spoke with this is an offer giving you to include everything in a single ballot, which is what has been done before. They've utilized a single verbiage. It is so this is what it would look like if you were offering a single amendment.
I don't think we want to be there.
Obviously not. Anything else? Mr. Hayes?
Mr. President, thank you. In reference to Mr. Cox's option, option A, I could support. Option B, I cannot support that. It gets too complicated when you got in there with the A, B, C, D, E, F, and whatever, and you know, you could mark A and not mark B, and really you could have more votes for one thing and less votes for that, because people didn't mark it.
Well,
I
if you look at it, Mr. Hayes, you really couldn't do that. You would either accept all of those or none of those.
Yeah, so that's why
Which is what
we're trying to avoid.
we're trying to avoid that. The
So-
Charter Review Committee said that to us.
So-
You know,
so,
keep
uh,
it separated.
yeah, so-
You gotta
so,
keep
uh,
it separated.
So number 8,
You got one thing that you vote for the charter or against the charter, and then you vote for or against the two positions. Well, you could vote no on that, vote yes on that.
Yes.
And that is in that charter. That don't make sense.
No, it don't.
Okay.
so Mr. President, since I had the floor.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I
Go
can
ahead.
continue, thank you. So in reference to what I was saying, option B is a no-go from the start for me. Option A looks quite well, and understanding that, the city cannot put forth taxpayers' money to go either way or, which I think is great, you know, but we as separate individuals, my understanding when I read it, when you explained it, we can talk to anybody any way we want to, talk to the media, put something on Facebook or whatever, but we can, as long as we don't spend city's money, we're good. Am I, that correct, right?
Yes, you can say whatever you want to about it, as long as you're not out there together talking about it. You can't do that, but individually, you can say what your thoughts are any way you want to.
So, like
It's
Mr.
just the
Whitten's
city, when the city's paying for it, is when you get into the situation to make sure it's balanced.
like Mr. Whitten's, town halls we have town halls, we can espouse our view of what we think, at a town hall setting, right?
We can, but I would just caution you this. When I have a regular town hall meeting, Teresa supports that meeting. She does flyers, she prints up flyers for me, gets them distributed, shows up at the meeting. We couldn't do that.
You couldn't do that.
Because that would be using taxpayers' money. So our own town hall meetings, I believe we would have to print our
Our
own,
own.
distribute our own, and go there by ourselves and that kind of stuff.
But
So
yeah,
we're not giving any
Money,
semblance
yeah,
that the
for-
city is supporting us with taxpayer money or whatever.
Okay, that's.
But I'd like to address Mr. Hawley's concern because I hear what you're saying, that if you rejected Amendment 1, then 2 and 3 doesn't count. But I think Amendment 1 is very narrow. It says that you're going to change the charter because of, to make format changes, obsolete and redundant language. So you can still do that or not do that and still go to a city manager form of government or a city clerk, changing that without affecting that first amendment whatsoever. Because that's just changing archaic stuff in there, like getting rid of the city coroner that's in there.
I would think that first sentence would be left out, it'd be better, because that makes it look like you're taking sides.
Yeah, we've,
Oh, I see what you're saying, in terms of, it is disjointed, redundant and archaic, but the rest of it,
may
but
be
the rest of it you're
factual,
saying
but
there,
it still makes you sound like you're taking a position.
but the rest of it could be in
Yeah.
there. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
Mr. President,
That is making a judgment, which is true, but,
if we just use the bold type,
yeah, that's what you're saying, just cut off the first
yeah,
sentence.
all the adjectives in there is not necessary.
yeah, the bold type is really kind of your meat and potatoes there.
Yep.
Okay. May I elaborate a little bit more at what Mr. Hawley and I had talked about earlier? Oh, if Amendment 1, such as we're looking at the sheet, if Amendment 1 passes, and say Amendment 2 passes, but Amendment 3 did not, that's when I said that there's some of the proposed verbiage for the charter would have to be reworded, because in the proposed charter, there is an appointed clerk. But if the,
And a city manager also.
Yeah.
yeah, but a city manager's not elected. If the city manager didn't pass, then that pretty much all you could do is revise the charter to make it updated. You couldn't change either of the other.
If you voted against the charter, charter, you voted for the charter, and you voted against it.
Mm-hmm.
City manager, when you voted for the charter, you were voting for a city manager because that's where it is.
You would have to redo the verbiage of the proposed charter and have the ordinance into a new ordinance and adopt it. Because before you can send it to be voted on, you're going to have to adopt that approved verbiage and these questions into an ordinance. Well, depending on what passes, you're going to have to come back and redo that particular process. If all three pass, then your verbiage is correct and it can stand. If one or two pass, the verbiage that was in the adopted ordinance would have to be redone because your proposed verbiage for the charter would be incorrect and therefore invalid. So,
Would you have to rescind the whole ordinance? Or-
no, you would not, you would only,
Amend
you
it.
would amend the ordinance in order to take out the portions of the approved, proposed verbiage of the charter. And you would, just like we amended out, you will amend and change that particular verbiage.
I'd like to ask about the balloons, the little side dubers on, no, that's what actually, Fort Walton Beach actually did that on the ballot.
No, sir.
Oh.
This, that's what I'm saying. That's part of educational material. You
Okay.
may want to, sometimes when you see the amendment and legalese is not readily understandable to a lot of common
I
people.
just want to make sure, I thought you were saying it was on the ballot.
No, it's just a part of their,
I don't want balloons on my ballot.
it's just part of their informational strategy.
Mr. President,
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Spear.
in option one, I'm a little confused. Option A, number one, it talks about repealing the charter, and then everywhere else it talks about amending the charter. Then on option B,
I don't think anybody likes option B anyway.
yeah, again, it says relating to the repeal and replacement of the city charter. Isn't that an amendment too? I mean, we're not replacing the entire charter, so we're not repealing it, we're just amending it.
You are going to repeal all of the current verbiage, and you're going to replace it with new verbiage.
So we're going to repeal the entire charter.
You're going to repeal
Top to
the
bottom.
entire top to bottom because it's more
Okay, then we don't need
simplistic.
to be talking about amendments.
Well, keep in
Do you need
mind,
to be talking about a repeal or an amendment?
okay, the repeal takes place in item number one. Now, if you go through with your others, they're already in the new charter. But if you go item number one and you have your new charter in place, and you go with item number two, which is your city manager form of government. Okay, well, let's say that the city manager form of government did not pass, which means that your new charter passed and they're approving the changes, format changes and redundant language and all that. You would then go back into, say, Ordinance 101 is where your charter ordinance, that's how you adopt your charter ordinance and these ballot questions. You would then have to go back and amend Ordinance 101 and remove anything within item 2 and 3 that did not pass. So what you would be left with is, say you're going to amend it with ordinance number 115. 115 would then have the revised verbiage for your charter. You must put the verbiage of the charter in ordinance format to take it to the voters. If they do not pass a certain element of this, like say they pass 1 and 2 and go for the revised verbiage and they go for the city manager, however, they still want to elect their clerk. When it's over and the referendum is completed, you would then file an amended ordinance amending the verbiage in the section where it It talks about the clerk to be an elected position. So that new ordinance would simply amend that verbiage, and then that in entirety would become your charter. Is that understandable? Okay, well, that's what it
Well,
is.
I couldn't make the connection of repealing the charter and then amending it. I just thought we were going to replace it or amend it.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff in here that could be worded that would be better. But we're gonna need to work on that, and we got
Yeah, that's what I
time.
say, I need the time. What I'm asking for is attorney dollars to sit down with Mr. Hawley and be able to discuss this, and with Mr. Shirley.
Why Mr. Shirley? He's a land attorney. Why are we asking him to get involved in the charter?
Just a second set of eyes. Is there another attorney that we have on staff, on contract that would be more capable?
Shirley is the city attorney.
He's the city attorney,
Yeah.
so.
Tallahassee.
Why not Paul Lux? He's already paid for it, and he's done this before.
Mr. Lux give us his advice this morning for free. He doesn't do a legal review. I've already asked him.
Mr. Hayes.
Take a shot.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. And like the explanation that Ms. Teresa gave, our distinguished councilman, citizens won't understand all that part of it. So we know that some won't, and hopefully most of them will. But I'm in agreement that we have to make this as simple read as possible, so that people can understand that. When I was at a meeting last Thursday in Port St. Joe, it was brought to our attention by Lynn Tipton out of our Florida League of Cities University down in Orlando, which runs the courses down there in education for elected officials. And I don't know if the percentage fits this area right here, but it's probably fairly close. 65% of the people that are citizens of Florida are not really, they're non-Floridians, meaning not born or raised in this area. So that was interesting for me, because that means, in my opinion, we have to educate at different levels for different people, because different people come from different locations and they had different whatever they might have had for as their form of government. Some of them aren't familiar with what we have right now. Some of them probably don't really care, but in my opinion, it's going to be better for the city if they do decide to go that way. But then another thing we have to realize, and I don't know how we capture this, we could do early education on this right here, which I really hope we do. But with 800 people, the statistics right now is 800 new people coming to Florida every day. We're going to get some of those people. They're not going to know what's going on when they get here a month or two out, unless it's an ongoing process up until that date for us informing. So my question is, how are we going to capture everybody at the different levels? That's just a question that bothers me. And I'm just throwing it out to whoever can come up with a good answer.
That's the reason the way you communicate needs to be varied and needs to be concise. You need meetings, you need workshops, you need written material, you need handouts, you need a visible question-answer type element. There needs to be a constant reach out for anybody that does have questions. When we had the rezoning, and what we did was we hooked a phone up that had a message on it for them to leave their questions. So nobody answered it all day. It was actually recorded. And various times of the day, we would pull those questions off and address it with the person that was making the call, whether it was for written information to be sent to them, or if it was simply they had a question that somebody could just answer over the phone, whether an email. But that would actually be something that you might want to consider as a hotline, so that people can have a question answer, and it just records on the phone, and there it goes. You may want, like I said, we need to reach out and do multiple faceted communication and education of the public.
one
President,
thing.
Yeah, you still have the floor.
One other observation, and what she's saying is great. And what comes to mind when I ran, when I first ran, and I was amazed. The voting place precinct for me was right across the street from a certain housing area. Signs everywhere. In front of it, about on the property they were staying. I asked one of my citizens, "Did you vote?" And you know what they told me? What, y'all had an election? I mean, it's right across from the polling place. And I was amazed, but what I'm saying is that there's no matter how much we do to educate the public, there's gonna be a certain percentage that we're not gonna reach regardless. I don't know how you do that, but we're not gonna reach 100% or 90% of the voting populace. My major concern is I know a certain percentage that is gonna be well informed. What about the ones who aren't informed and aren't gonna vote? That's my concern. 65% of our population is not Floridians. Are they concerned about what's going on here? That's a major concern for me. I know we have to educate, but the thing is, and I understand what you're saying right there, but that's still a major concern. How are we going to reach? You see what we have in the audience right now. We've packed our meetings for two things that I know since I've been here, and I've been here going on 5 years. Well, three things that we've packed out. The thing is, how many people are we going to get to the workshops to give us some input? You know, that's our citizens need input. So that's just a concern that I want to get out to people. If you want to change, then you got to come out. You know, your vote's got to count for whatever way you want it. That's one of my main concerns. Mr. President, I'm through talking.
Yes, Mr. Hall.
We're talking about educating them, but one education is more important than anything else, is to let them know there's gonna be an election and try to get them to come out.
You know, that's a concern. And although we were criticized for delaying this referendum until the primary, actually, based on the statistics that Mr. Lux gave us, we'll have a better turnout in the primary than we would have had if we'd done the mail-out, which is, well, I favored doing the mail-out. But when he said the 2 mail-outs they had got 10% response. And now, if you look at the stats on Paul Lux's website, it doesn't give it by city for primary. It gives it by the county. 29% in the primary. Then it goes up to over 70% in the general election, which you don't want to wait till then. But 29% is not great. But what do we have in the last city election? 3.8.
Yeah.
And typically 11 to 12%. So 29% all of a sudden sounds pretty good, even though it really isn't.
One thing I wondered, and I didn't want to bring this forward until we could actually sit down and consult with legal. What about other organizations, clubs, different agencies within that are in our city, such as Rotary or I
brought a list with me.
Good.
I periodically get invited to different groups, and that would be the golden opportunity. We all share in that. I mean, we've got, see if I have them all listed here, but like you said, we have the Kiwanis group, we have the Rotary group, we have the Lions, we have the Elks, we have the DMs, not the DMC. Sorry. We had the AMVETS, we had the American Legion.
There's a lot of them.
A lot of
You can
groups.
address them and tell them what you think. It's not like it.
No, you can just go there and do a Q&A with them. You can do town hall meetings if you feel comfortable doing those. But some of the other things, you know, somebody, I guess it was Betsy, supplied us with this prototype from Temple Terrace. And a lot of the things they had on there, I had on my list of what we should be doing. So that was a good reference. A dedicated online web presence. Otherwise, not necessarily the city of Crestview, a lot of people don't want to go there, but you have a dedicated website, or you have a page off your website that goes strictly to addressing a factual comparison between what we have and what's going to be on the charter, so they can make their own decision.
Right.
Video would be great. Someone does a video, and again, comparison, factual comparison, this is what we have, this is what your charter review committee recommended. Community opportunities, that would be your clubs. Series of news releases, Crestview News Bulletin, WAAZ, WJSB Radio, CCTV, even WEAR. Pensacola, if you, I send them stuff all the time. If it piques their interest, if they think it's gonna get viewers, they'll come over and cover our public hearings. They'll cover our workshops. They've been in my town hall meetings.
Yes, sir.
Newsprint, we talked about, sending that out. And what we'll end up having to do is come up with a cost analysis and authorize the expenditure of funds to do that. Social media is a big thing. Facebook,
Well, we have a Facebook.
Twitter, yeah, we have that. But we all have our separate accounts too, that we can be using that. That would be the ongoing thing. You're right, if you send out mailings that it costs us $12,000-$13,000, you're not gonna do that 2 or 3 times. At what point do you do it, then you don't do it again? So that's where social media is gonna have to pick up. The newspaper, radio, television, and Facebook. Printed posters, nothing wrong with posting things around the city. You know that when people go on to Desi's or Tropical Palms, or especially you go get a haircut, you're looking for anything to read because you're waiting to get a seat. So those kind of places you can put posters up. And then it says town hall meetings, we have to have public hearings. Open house, maybe that's a viable option too, where they can just go around and talk to people individually. But anyway, those are a bunch of things that I think we can think about. But the issue this evening, I guess, is what are we gonna do and who's gonna do it?
Mr. Quinton, I can.
Yes, Madam Clerk.
I think before we start doing anything, I was just sitting here thinking, y'all need to come up with a set standard of the factual information. So that if we have a phone call, they get that information emailed to them. The same information goes on the website, the same information goes on the social
And
media.
that's what they'll do with the legal opinion.
Yeah, so it's exactly, and y'all approve it, it's like, this is gonna be the public city position on this factual information. What you do individually or what we do individually.
You put your own
nothing.
spin on it once you know
Right.
where you're.
But what goes out to the public from City Hall, whether on the
Should be
website,
consistent.
video,
I
it's
agree
got
with
to
that.
be exactly the same.
Exactly, and that is kind of what we need first, because we've got to have, by April 9th, we've got to know what our ballot's gonna look like, and begin adoption of that. And that will give you more time, because your main reach the public is going to be after what you've got to present has been adopted. From the second half of May, June and July, and the month of August will be your outreach to wherever you want to outreach, meetings or whatever, your main push, because people have short-term memories. You're going to want to push like the 2 months before the election, because that's what they're going to be churning and talking about. You don't want it to get to be old hat. So what we need to primarily consider is, what are we going to stand on, and then prepare for you to go stand on. So what we need to be thinking of is our documentation.
Well, why don't you tell us what you need the authorization to get with the attorney, and we'll just cut through the chase and do it.
Okay, well, before we talk to attorney, because, that does takes a little funding, little money. So I need to be able to sit down with Mr. Hawley and also send our stuff to Mr. Shirley and get his review back, because we do need a consensus sort of what's right, what's indeed factual, what amendments we want. I need to know how y'all want to break this up. If you want to add another amendment, do you want to take away an amendment? I need some type of feedback of what you want to see on that ballot, so that I can take it to the attorney in order to facilitate that.
Yes, Mr. Blocker, go ahead.
Well, Mr. President, I go back alluded to what Mr. Holly just stated. That's been my concern for 3 years, educating the people. I still believe, number one, that should be done, and we're gonna have to spend a few dollars to do it. Understand that? But I believe that we are to send a flyer out in the water bill to the citizens of Crestview, Florida. Question number one, do you feel or do you agree that we need to change Crestview City Charter? Yes or no? Then, this your options. With contact numbers whatsoever, give a time before you put in the verbiage down on this here ballot coming up. But I think the people ought to have the right to know, and the majority, if we go spend X amount of dollars on attorneys, et cetera, let the people be educated. And how you gonna do it? If they say yes, we need to change it, but if they say no, forget it.
Yes, Mr. Cox.
Yes, putting out the factual information seems to be okay, but wouldn't want to ask for a vote before a legal vote. So I wouldn't be for that previous suggestion.
Mr. Hayes?
Thank you. And this is just for, you know, I like that you have to go multiple ways. I get a water bill every month. I don't even look at it. That's just me personally. What's inside of it, I don't know, because I don't really look at it to see. And I think a lot of people might be the same way I am. You glance at it to see how much you owe, and basically that's it. All the other stuff, because you get so much junk mail that you don't want to waste your time looking at a bunch of mail. But with multi-options, you should be able to get somebody some way. So water bills, yeah, I think it's a free insert, or how much? It's not that much. It's not a whole lot though. Let's insert them in there, but that's one method which would be good for the people who look at their water bills, other than the price.
That could be part of your factual information, I don't know that you want to start over. We've already done that process.
The question I did pose to Mr. Lux was if we could utilize the water bill mailing, because I knew it would be an item. Yes, we can, but all you can put in there is very factual information.
Oh,
It can-
anything
it's-
we send from the city has to be factual.
Well, it has to be
Water bill, not.
factual, but it's not more or less, you don't really send an inquiry back. You send a factual
Yeah.
statement of,
Not the same thing you're spending city money on.
Exactly.
Mr. President,
Yeah, Mr. Fairclough.
remember, I think it was probably the first meeting we had when we started going down this road at Warrior Hall. Somebody made some, I don't know who it was, but they did a good job, made some posters,
City clerk.
okay? Thank you. Explaining how the what is it, the
Structure of.
structure of who's bossed down to who isn't. What would be wrong, is it against the law if we say we're going to have 3 workshops, town hall meetings, whatever you want to call it, and consider every possibility of strong mayor, weak mayor, no mayor, on down the line that this charter could do, and just have a Q&A for a couple hours.
I think, if I may respond, I think we narrowed, we impaneled a committee to narrow it down, so we wouldn't have to
Well-
give 5, 6, 7 different options. We narrowed it down, and they came back to us and
Well,
said,
we just handle those then, and then have a Q&A with those.
and which is, I've taken those to private meetings before. I borrowed it from the mayor's office, I forgot to tell him, but no. I borrowed it from his office, and I've used those at different town hall meetings where I used them. And, but I don't think we want to enter confusion into it by talking about several different forms that we're not voting on.
Well, we're not educating then.
That's right.
We're only going to educate them what the choices are. Keep what you have or go to this. Those are your choices.
Well, that we educate them on the choices.
Yep, I agree with that, but you start talking about strong mayor, weak mayor.
Well, no, I'm just saying, you know, I don't care if it's 3 or 12, you know, just as long as we can get people to come and we can answer their questions and explain it all. Or try to. I mean, what's wrong with having, and like I say, town hall workshops, whatever you wanna call it, just go. I'm willing to throw in $50 to buy water, you know, if somebody wants to come there and have something to drink. You know,
We can. We talk about, we can have workshops.
Yeah,
It's up to
all of
us.
that, but the biggest problem you've got is to get them to come out and vote, and I don't know how to do that. But that's,
well, maybe they will after these workshops.
This is a workshop.
Yeah, but we haven't advertised that we're going to explain all this stuff that we're trying
I
to
think in
do.
the past, they've got 1,500 people votes every year. Every time they have a vote, about the same number.
Well, I know that the turnout was extremely low. I even sent a letter to the editor thanking everybody for putting their trust in me to vote for all the city officials. That you let me pick them all, so you gotta go with what I pick.
But I will tell you this, I've seen a change since the last election. There are people engaged that were not engaged before. I think you're gonna be surprised. I think there are gonna be people showing up at the polls that we didn't see before. Town hall meeting I had about city government a year or so ago, got a really good turnout, got a lot of good feedback. And they started that webpage, and on Facebook, you've been on it, Craigslist Citizens for Change, about 1,500 people on there. Some of those people were not even engaged before. So I see people becoming involved that weren't. So I think if we're really reaching out and educating, I think we're gonna get a better turnout than
Well,
we've gotten in the past.
We just notify the Crestview Citizens for Change that we're gonna have 3 workshops. These are the dates. Put it out and bring your people.
That's not the only option. I'm just saying, but I think it was brought up at the town hall meeting, and you said it, Mr. Hayes, when I was just kind of maybe chastising a little bit about the 3.8% turnout, and the response was that we didn't know about the election, and they started eliminating, and when I said, well, we could put it in the water bill, and the majority of people, we don't read our water bill. We pay it online, we don't look at it, we throw it away, whatever. So I think a separate mailing identified as something very special in the city would be more effective than throwing it in with the water bill. So I think it'll cost us $12,000–13,000, which is what we saved by not doing the mail-out ballot. Yes, Mr. Cox, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I would question, we saved, just like you stated, we saved that. I wouldn't be for spending that additional amount again to educate. We're trying to have a workshop here. It's an open forum. The public is invited. I'm sorry, the attendance is low, but, you know, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't really make them drink. So,
Well,
Gentlemen, this is not advertised.
I
Let me
think-
just bring that to your mind, that your meetings are not really advertised unless there's some type of public meeting where you're passing some type of ordinance, when that ordinance itself is in advertised.
I think we publicized it better, maybe, maybe had it at Warriors Hall, expecting a big group, and just really play it up. Maybe we'd get a group of people there. I mean, we certainly want to get them involved. And I think that if we didn't send out anything in printed material, we would be remiss in not doing that.
Well, if we schedule 3, maybe we won't get many at the first one. The second one may be a little bit more, and it might be a packed house for the third one.
Because ones that are closer to the election are gonna have more impact anyway.
Yes, it will.
Yeah. That's the reason you don't want to wear them out. You want to actually do your big advertisement campaign, 4 to 6 weeks before they need to show up. So it's, otherwise it'll be old hat. It'll be, they'll be tired out with it.
Well, I still,
Yeah.
just like Mr. Hayes said a
Mhm.
while ago, people across the street from the polling place didn't know there was an election. Now, had that election been next week, these people may have known about it and shown up. So if we have more than one chance for these
Yeah.
people to get educated, maybe it'll grow and we'll have a house full the last time. I mean,
Well, if
who
you-
knows? You know, you don't know until you try.
Well, if you begin a good 6 weeks out to have a definite, and it's already advertised, and you've got a 6-week one, and maybe a 4-week, and then a 2, to have your big gatherings. But during the whole time you're doing this, you're also going to continue your social media, and you're going to continue, excuse me, all the other avenues that you're doing. The printed documentation, your flyers, your public outreach. You're going to continue all that. This would just be a group gathering in order to energize your voters.
You know, another thing that, I'm sorry, were you
Yeah,
done?
go ahead.
Another thing we might want to think about. Common complaint we get is, when you have your meetings at 5:30, 6 o'clock, we can't get into town by then. And we thought about it, we're not gonna be able to change, you know, it's pretty typical, most city councils, county commissions, everything meet at 6 PM. But maybe for something educational, we wanna move it to 7 PM, where we know that people can actually get home from work, grab a bite to eat, you know, do something or whatever, and then show up for the meetings. Just for the workshops, you might wanna do it at 7 PM. Yes, Mr. Hayes?
In addition to what you're saying, because that was the same thought I was thinking, the time period. Some people are just busy in the afternoon. We know we have a large share of the populace that doesn't work. So if you try to get them in the mornings, catch them at Desi's. That's where a majority of them are. I'm looking at staggered time, so nobody can have can come in and say, "Well, we couldn't make the meeting. I was tied up in traffic, or I'm busy during that time of day." But you know, we're trying to educate. I think we're trying to make a sincere effort towards this. I really do. To let the citizens, give the citizens an opportunity to let their voice be known. Whatever outcome is, you know. I don't want to come back and say, well, we weren't aware of it and we couldn't come to your meetings. You know, I don't want like the thing, I didn't know we were having an election. Really, that bothered me. It did, across the street. But I think we're flexible enough where we can do that. Have a morning meeting, midday and the evening, maybe moving the time since we know how the traffic flow is from that certain time frame to give people an opportunity to get here. And if we have to change dates on it or something like, I think we're real flexible towards our citizens on this.
As long as we don't change the date after we publish it.
Well, I'm not opposed to having one on Saturday.
Gentlemen, we had actual experience of that
Saturday sounds
in our rezoning. We booked various rotating. We did an 8, a 10, a 12, a 1, a 2, because our information packet was only about 40 minutes long. We did a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4:30, a 5, and a 6. So, and you would be surprised at the number of people. It was not overly crowded, but it was continuous. So we just, but we dedicated one particular day because there was such few staff. But it is amazing that the different people you get. We get the workers, so we get the coming homes. We get the moms in the afternoon. We get the lunchtime people. So it works successfully in that endeavor. But we only had probably 2,000 people, and here we're trying to reach citywide. So
Yes, Mr. Cox?
Is the election date, is that defined as, is that August 28th?
August 28th.
Okay. Need to nail that down. Thank you.
So, what I hear you say though, right now, you want to consult with the attorney, get their cost analysis, and bring it back to us at the next city council meeting?
We can
for
bring it
approval?
back at the next city council meeting. If you have some feedback that I could carry and sort of know whether or not we're talking about 3 amendments or 5. Is that something that we can narrow?
I think you can pretty well, I don't think anybody was in favor of option B.
Well, sir, I had to give you an
I
option,
understand
so
it, but you're asking for feedback, so I'm
That's
telling you,
right, so
option B is.
we're gonna
is
X
down and
option
out.
B. Well, I've already X'd him, so.
Okay.
So,
So in terms of option A,
Mm-hmm.
I think you just have to get the legal verbiage.
we're gonna get the legal verbiage.
Verbiage and we'll move on from there.
And if there is something else that the council would like to include as an amendment 4, we can, depending on how it hits in the priority, we can always shift that around. We think we've got it prioritized now in the reigning that would be the least
I think this covers
intrusive.
what we want to do. We don't want to fatigue people out either.
Exactly. That was one of the concerns that Mr. Lux had, was you get voter fatigue, especially when you get a long string. And the city's we're at the bottom after all the other, the state and the county and,
It's hot and humid in August too, Mr. President.
yes. So-
All right, do we-
Mr. Whitten,
Yes,
one
Madam
of,
Clerk.
Teresa's questions was the finances. I don't think the finance for legal fees is gonna be an issue. We can come back later if we go over our budget, but I don't think that will be an issue. It
No,
will
we
be
just
like a
want,
25-hour.
we just wanted to bring us an estimate.
But I mean, I don't know if you wanna delay. They don't know how long it's gonna take. But I don't think that Mr. Shirley and Mr. Holly have the same hourly rate. I don't think unless you're gonna spend 40 hours of this, I don't think it'll fall within our budget for legal fees.
Not gonna spend that many hours.
He's not gonna spend.
You'll want
I can't
to just
just-
say, go ahead with the,
Yeah.
it's
Consensus.
what we need to do. So,
Go ahead.
If there's an issue, we can come back later.
Okay.
Got the council's fee funds. Emergency funds.
Okay, any other discussion before you turn this over to the public?
Mr.
Yes,
President,
Mr.
let me make one last comment.
Okay, go ahead.
If these 5 men sitting right here had the guts to document their input of the options needed, put it on a documentation, get it to her by the day week, they have the consensus and the information that she could work with.
Mr. President, I'm sort of lost.
I'm not sure exactly what you're saying, Mr. Walker.
Well, you're going around the room all the time with different things, you change from one topic to another. But now what do we individual council members think that should go, the input that she needs to work with?
We just told
We've
them.
narrowed this down. Well, you said you're gonna do away with one, you could go with the other. Well, I don't know where I could or not.
We eliminated option B, Mr. Blocker.
Yeah, you did. I hadn't, but the council did.
The consensus, okay. And I'm not gonna go there.
I didn't think it was.
No, because I'll be quiet. What we said was we'll go with option A and get the legal review of that and then bring it back to us.
Okay. And do we want to also get review on our factual information? Do you want to get, so that we can get guidelines to make sure that what we're presenting will be, but that can also roll into a little bit later time frame. Today is the 26th. We have the month of March before we will need the ordinance prepared in order to advertise. I need to advertise about the 3rd week in March for the passage of the ordinance. So that means I will need to bring this back to you on March 12th.
I thought the second reading has to be
Yeah.
advertised, not the first.
There's a sort of a step out. We're not really sure that this qualifies because some of your comp plans and public advertisements require a second advertisement. If I have to have the advertisement for the 9th, it'll have to be placed in March. And if I'm not, that's one of the questions for the attorney. If I do not have to advertise that particular reading, then I would advertise the end of April. But if that is one of the questions that I need to know, whether or not it being the ordinance that it is, if it's going to be valuable in order to be advertised to the public.
Oh, yeah, we're not gonna mess up the advertising.
Yeah. So, thank you, sir.
Okay, thank
Mr.
you.
President, and just
Yes,
on what
Mr.
you said, we asked it, but we never did say it. Yeah, we need attorney to review, the factual part of it.
Right.
Because I'm not gonna put my name behind something that's questionable. And stand, they said this is what we're gonna stand
Mr.
on,
Holly,
so make
Mr.
sure.
Holly's
that-
gonna take care of us.
I know Mr. Holly will.
Okay. This time, we'll take comments from the audience. First individual I have is first card I got was Miss Jones, Sue Jones.
Okay, I'm saying again. Two things.
Need your name and address, please.
My name is Teresa Sue Jones. I live at 48 Abbey Road in Crestview. I've been a resident of Crestview for almost 30 years. There was two things tonight: the adoption of the charter and education of the people. Yes, we do need to revise our charter. The language is old. But my problem is the education of the people. And you've discussed several different avenues, printed, newspaper, social media, all the news stuff and things. On a recent ordinance that was being revised, and I spoke to your council several times on that, I had a horrible time trying to find this stuff online. It is so confusing, and I'm very computer literate. And it was very difficult. And I was really, really looking for something. And for those who don't, who just want to read an ordinance, they're not going to spend that much time looking for it. It's hard. So we need to maybe look at that as far as getting the word out there to the people on voting. Just voting. Doesn't matter who you're voting for or what you're voting for, just go to the polls and vote. If we can just get that word out all the time, let everybody know. You got to dig to find out. I know. You put it out there, you advertise the meetings, but nobody shows up. Why? I knew I was interested in what was going on, so I came tonight. A lot of people don't know. They don't know when the meeting is. They don't know where the meeting is. So maybe we need to concentrate on that as a separate agenda meeting. The town hall meetings sound wonderful. That's how I met Mr. Whitten. That's how I started getting involved. But having more of these town hall meetings, as with the city charter, then what Ms. Teresa mentioned, having it on a weekend, maybe different times, so more people can get involved. I used to drive the Eglin 500 every day. I did it for 17 years. There is no way. I'd leave my office at 4 o'clock, and I didn't know if I was going to get home at 5, 7, or 8 o'clock, because you didn't know.
You got 30 seconds.
Yeah. So, but we need to try all these advertising efforts, the pamphlets, the handouts, the mailers, because if you just reach one other citizen to come, that may be the one that makes the big difference.
You're right. Thank you. Mr. Worth.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm Christian Worth. I live on 507 Boulder Street. I've been a resident for 20 years now. I think mirroring what everybody said tonight, education is a systemic issue. I think across the last several meetings I've been to, it seems like both the audience and some of the members here, there are several different issues that nobody's educated on. I personally would volunteer my time. I own a software engineering company. I will do any kind of knowledge hub that you guys would like, anything that the city needs. I think it's very important that we have, as she was saying, we have one central location where everybody can get the information they need to make a well-educated decision at the polls, or know when the polls or know when the elections are. I personally didn't know about any of it until the Citizens for Change Facebook page. I mean, that's just what people of my age seem to go to, is Facebook, and some of Mr. Witten's posts have been super helpful. The meeting tonight, I really didn't know about until that post. And that's partially, you know, the information's available. It's on the City of Crestview website. It's on the calendar there. So it's not a matter of it's not readily available. It's just not easy to access. So if there's anything I could do from that perspective to help, I am absolutely glad to volunteer my time. You know, I'd love to help on any of that aspect. But it's a systemic issue. My wife gave a presentation on some information previously. I think the information was delivered too late. If we do, whatever we present has to be factual. So that's a given. So I don't think anybody has an issue with that. Going on Facebook or going on the website, I mean, it has to be factual. Otherwise, we all look silly. Once that effort is complete, I'd be happy to post that information on the website, update it for free. I'll host another separate website. It's $14 to host a website. A lot cheaper than the $12,000 or $13,000 to mail out anything. So if there's anything like that I could do, I would be happy to help. But I mean, I think that's a great consensus. Some of these ideas are great. I had to take off work early today to come to the meeting. I too work in Fort Walton, so commute's an issue always. But you know, people just have to make an effort to do it. So I think if we spread the word, we tell people what we're talking about at these events, a lot more people will be interested in it. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Christian.
Mr. Witten, can I
Yes.
address the advertising of meetings just a little bit? Every week, when we have the meetings, on our City of Crestview Facebook page, we put a link to the agenda. On our City of Crestview Twitter page, we did put a link to the agenda. So all you gotta do is click on that link, and it pulls up the agenda for every meeting that we have, workshop or whatever.
I think what Christian is saying is people don't know it's there.
Yeah,
they
but
don't know it's
if
available.
everybody, if we could get the word out just to subscribe to the City of Crestview Facebook page or the City of Crestview Twitter, you're gonna get it whenever we have a meeting.
And I do that on my post. I put the link so they can go get the
Right.
agenda, whatever.
And in some of the information you were presenting tonight, it would be awesome if we had that information beforehand to review as well. So as the public, we can make an educated guess or educated conversation about, you know, some of the growth management stuff going on or anything like that. Because, you know, I wasn't aware of any of this, and I think if we could easily host a fax, a FAQ, or anything like that on the website where people can easily access it. So having some attachments to those links and to those different types of things would be super helpful.
The packets are on the links.
Okay, I didn't see it.
Thank you again.
Thanks.
Any other input from the audience?
Yeah.
Andrew Rensage, 197 Villacrest Drive, Crestview, Florida. We've been here since 2011. I actually served as the vice chair for the Charter Review Committee. I want to make sure, and I agree with everything everybody else has said prior to me speaking, the education piece is a key piece, but one thing we don't want to lose sight of is the legal piece. We only have a certain amount of time to ensure we get to process and get the referendum and get everything to Mr. Lux's office so that it is actually on the ballot come the election. A lot of these other pieces that it seems like we've gone around and around in a circle about this evening over the last hour are pieces that we as citizens, we as people who are involved in the community, that's our job. We need to continue to grow and get people out there and grow that voter base and everything. But the one thing that we cannot lose sight on is making sure that the write-ups, the 75 words, all of those other pieces are proper, or there is no vote. And everything that the Charter Review Committee and everything that we've gone on and on for months and months will be null and void. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other input? Mr. Cal.
I think I can be accurate in saying that in
Introduce yourself, please.
Cal Zethmar, WAAZ, WJSB, Crestview. As I approach birthday number 80, I can honestly say that I know in 60-plus years of serious news work, my first years I was like one of the, disc jockey guys, I have attended more city, county, state, federal meetings than all of everybody else in here combined. No doubt about it. I'm sure. Because I average, even now, 10 meetings a month sometimes. And what I can tell you is the same thing, whether it was Sylvester, Georgia with 3,000 people, or Atlanta, Georgia with 1 million plus, they all say, we're different than all the other cities in America. We're always different. I heard a famous speaker named Earl Nightingale one time say, if I stick you in the backside with a 2-inch hat pin, based on your pound, you're going to jump just as high up the floor as the guy in the other towns does. Now, it's not the lack of publicity that those meetings help. The mayor emeritus of this city, every council meeting usually has an announcement on our station saying there's a meeting and here's the agenda. It's a lot of people know it's there if they want to look at it, but you've got to realize there's lots of demands on our eyes and ears. It's really, am I being hurt by what they're doing at that meeting tonight that I got to go there and say I don't like what they're going to do to me? It says my ox being gored. That's why people turn out to the meetings. I've watched yours and you all have. If you haven't got something controversial going on, in my neighborhood that's going to bother me, then I don't really care what you're doing. It's just what is happening now. Down to some of this particular thing. I want to suggest on the First Amendment number 1 phrasing, some phrase in there be saying, after you say redundant language, comma, except that the determinations of the manager, council, or city clerk issues will be decided by items 2 and 3. In other words, they need to be warned in number 1 that is not an all-inclusive, you're buying what that thing is. It doesn't make them think that they, like we were saying even earlier, that if you vote yes there or no there, then it doesn't matter what happens in 2 and 3. All 3 are independent questions. You've got to find a way to legally phrase that. For Walton Beach did not have voter fatigue and fallout when they did 7 specific questions.
You have 30 seconds.
Okay. The other quick question, Ms. Betsy, can anything be printed on the outside of those envelopes the water bills go in that is unique to one time? Okay. Because if you could put something in big, bold red, we dare you to read this or something like that on there might help. They all done ahead. Now, in this one, of the 2 pieces here, this one is very negative, I think, in its approach. The bad, the good, and the ugly, that's negative advertising. This other piece is pretty good, other than the word abandons is a very negative word. Go to thesaurus, find a better word than the word abandons.
They'll work all that.
So they can work on that. That's just from a graphical point of view. But hey, people are going to show up only if they think they're being hurt by the government.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Ken with Crestview TV. You will be glad to know that you have educated over 600 people tonight live on Facebook. So there are some people are paying attention and watching what you're doing. So, and I will say another good thing is not one comment, not one, tonight about widening 85 or where the heck is the Target store coming. So you have accomplished some things this evening, gentlemen.
Thank you. Any other comments? Any other comments? Mayor, you have anything for us?
I want to remind the department heads that we have a meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning. It's very important. It's a brief meeting. Mrs. Roy has to get you versed on what has to come with all of our employees teaching about the public records laws. Mrs. Roy, with Mr. Steele not here tonight, we need to get in touch with Mr. Jones so he can represent us, one of our largest departments. Do you think you can do that in about 15 minutes in the morning?
Yeah, Mr. Steele will be there.
What's that?
Mr. Steele already told
Oh, he's going to be there? Good, okay. So I want to remind the others, but it won't take too long. But we have some things we really do have to take care of tomorrow morning. That's all I have.
Anything, Madam Clerk?
No, sir.
Any comments over there? All right, I'm adjourning this meeting. Thank you all for coming.